Railway Association of Canada to please give his comments on the subject matter of Bill C-47. Monsieur Brazeau, la parole est à vous.
You have the floor, Mr. Brazeau. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for having invited us today.
Is world-class. It is efficient, reliable, and cost-competitive. Extended interswitching, however, threatens this system. Canada's railways join transportation experts, industry leaders, unions, and others in strongly opposing the extended interswitching proposal in Bill C-47. To quote Murad Al-Kapid, CEO of grain processing giant AGT, we're not in favor of supply chain measures that benefit very few shippers, yet can have a very serious impact on the supply chain. Each switch adds to transit time. The more switches you do, the bigger the slowdowns. The more you handle a car, the longer it takes to get moving. Extended interswitching adds, on average, 1 to 2 days to rail transit times. It also adds unnecessary greenhouse gas emissions. Extended interswitching was tried between 2014 and 2017 and failed. It was abandoned by this government after a statutory review of the Canada Transportation Act. Then Transport Minister Marc Brazeau acknowledged the policy was always meant to be temporary. Nothing has changed that would justify going back to extended interswitching. Let's review why the policy was sunset. First, lack of reciprocity with the U.S. Regulated interswitching does not exist in the United States. Under the government's proposal, U.S. railways can solicit Canadian traffic at below market rates without any reciprocity for CN and CPKC to do the same in the U.S. That means fewer available carloads for Canadian railroaders to move across Canada. It also means less available work for port workers if shipments end up in Seattle rather than Vancouver, for example. These are good-paying, overwhelmingly union jobs. The Teamsters and others have expressed concern. Pourquoi le Parlement devrait...
Why should Parliament disadvantage internationally Canadian railway workers for the direct benefit of American railroaders?
Former ADM at Transport Canada told Parliament in 2017 that extended interswitching was, and I quote, having unintended consequences on the competitiveness of our railways vis-a-vis the U.S. railways. Long-haul interswitching was the government's response at the time. This gives shippers access to competing railways up to 1,200 kilometers at essentially commercial rates based on comparable traffic without the damaging consequences we saw with extended interswitching previously. Now, the government wants to resurrect a policy it already recognized was a failure. The second reason for sunsetting was the non-compensatory rate. Bill C-47 will force Canadian railways to move traffic, sometimes in the wrong direction, and always at below market rates. The 2016 review found that below market rates hurt railways' ability to reinvest. Everything railways purchase is at market rates, from steel to locomotives to labor. Railways cannot be the only part of our supply chain not operating at market rates. The National Supply Chain Task Force never consulted railways on the complicated subject of interswitching before making this poorly thought-out recommendation. It also did not speak with any rail operations experts. Grain rates are already regulated through the maximum revenue entitlement. Any shipper can challenge a railway rate or service offering through arbitration at the Canadian Transportation Agency under existing regulatory processes. Rail is already one of the most regulated industries in this country. All grain starts in a truck. All major grain companies have elevators on both CN and CPKC lines, another form of competition for our railways. To move 1 ton of grain 1 mile in Canada, it costs on average just 2.97 cents US. While our Class 1 railways both set records for grain movements during this crop year. And this was made possible by a $1 billion investment in new hopper cars built in Hamilton, Ontario, and tens of billions of dollars of investment in capacity and technology over the past decade. An independent study in January found that Canadian freight rates are, on average, the lowest amongst market economies. In fact, 11% lower than the U.S. These rates support the competitiveness of all Canadian railway shippers. The extended interswitching is a cure in search of a disease. There is no justification for even more market intervention, particularly through such an irresponsible policy. La décision du gouvernement
The decision of the government to eliminate this was the right one.
in this policy want is a cheaper rate. It is not about improving service, nor will it improve competitiveness. Extended interswitching will do the exact opposite. Division 22 must be deleted entirely, or at least amended. Honourable Senators, we're asking at minimum that rates be market-based and applicable only to Canadian origins and destinations. You'll find more details in our brief submitted to this committee. Mr. Chair, it's collaboration and not more economic regulations that will move supply chains. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur Brazeau.
Thank you, Mr. Brazeau.
Recognized from the National Airlines Council of Canada, Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison, la parole est à vous, s'il vous plaît.
You have the floor, Mr.